Hi, everybody. Welcome to today's Shape Unplugged episode. I have a very special guest with me today, somebody who is very familiar to this community, somebody who many of you have had the chance to meet and work with in preparation for Speak Out Day. So yes, it is none other than our amazing longtime government affairs consultant for Shape America, Karen Johnson. And Karen is here today to talk with us about advocacy efforts, her time with Shape America, her storied career, all the fun things. So thank you so much, Karen, for being with us today and spending a little bit of time with our Shape America community.
Hi, Stephanie. It is the highlight of my day. It's so good to see you, and I'll do anything for Shape America. You know, you're my very, very favorite group.
We so appreciate you, and you are our very, very favorite Shape America champion, advocate, and government affairs consultant. All of these so true in our world. Yes, those who've had a chance to attend Speak Out Day and to work with you just know how amazing you are and how passionate you are about helping us be equipped to be advocates when we're on the Hill. So we have so much appreciation for that. And speaking of your career and your work with us, I know that you've had a very storied career in general in the world of education advocacy. And you had the opportunity to work for several different administrations in the White House, which is really, really cool. I know many of our listeners also think this about you and your career. Do you have any memorable highlights that you might be able to share with us? Maybe some favorite moments that you have as you look back over time, maybe something that really influenced how you thought about advocacy in your work.
You know, I do, and I've been incredibly lucky. My background is really in politics. I worked on the Hill when I first moved to DC, but then I landed in Republican Party politics, and spent the better part of, I'll say, the first half of my career running campaigns, everything from political education to large scale political events and campaigns. And I never meant to get into policy, and I never meant to get into education policy, but it's kind of like one of those DC stories where a friend of mine was the chief of staff at the Department of Education, and they had just had to ask the assistant secretary for congressional affairs to leave, and they were looking for a replacement, and they needed somebody that was known on the Hill, understood how the administration worked, but would be loyal to President Bush. And I really didn't have a background in education policy, but they liked that. I was a blank slate. So I wasn't going to be going to the Hill and advocating for my own ideas. And so I'm told that when they floated my name to the president, who knew me from political campaigns, he said, "An unorthodox choice, but I'll support her." So, you know, I it makes me laugh, and it's such a Washington story, but like so many things in life, when an opportunity arises, you grab it and then you just immerse yourself in it and you run with it. And so I became immersed in education policy because I knew nothing. So I can still tell you things about No Child Left Behind that other people have forgotten. And one of the things that I had to do as the Assistant Secretary for Congressional Affairs, which was a Senate confirmed position, which is scary enough, but I had to escort the Secretary of Education to all of his Hill meetings. And back then, Ted Kennedy was the chairman of the HELP committee. And everyone was in awe of Ted Kennedy. And I don't care what Republicans or Democrats will tell you, the entire city, the entire country, the entire world was in awe of Ted Kennedy. So I remember the first time that Secretary Page and I met with Senator Kennedy. And this was after I was confirmed. And I didn't have to meet with him for my confirmation. I just had to meet with his staff. But I was mentally prepared to. But anyway, Secretary Page and I go and we meet with Senator Kennedy. And Senator Kennedy said to Secretary Page, Rod, here's the deal. The Republicans are going to defend you. The Democrats are going to try to make some points off of you. Your job is to defend your budget. And this is what Hillary Clinton's going to say. This is what John Edwards is going to say. And he went down the row of the Democrats and he prepared Secretary Page for everything that was going to happen. And he said to Secretary Page, I want you to be successful. That's my job as a chairman. And he was so gracious and he was so smart. And Secretary Page and I were both absolutely blown away, because here's the Democrat, who could have made points off of him. And it was a brutal meeting because the Bush administration had made some cuts that the Democrats didn't like, but under today's prism, it was nothing. But back then, you kind of quaked in your boots. But I'll never forget what just a wonderful, smart, gracious individual Ted Kennedy was. And I learned so much being with him and with Secretary Page that transparency is the best thing, right? Everybody has to be able to perform at their very, very best. And that's when you get good government.
That is so cool. And I love that. And I love your memory of the grace and professionalism and civility are the three words that come to mind.
Yep.
Describing all of that interaction and the intellect. I think that is so cool. And I really love hearing that story. That's really neat.
It was really an eye-opening experience. And Secretary Page, he was a practitioner. He was head of the Houston Independent School District. So, coming to DC was a big, big deal for him. And working with people like John Boehner and George Miller and Judd Gregg and Ted Kennedy, and that was awe-inspiring for him, and he handled it beautifully. And they respected him because they respected that he was a true practitioner. And whether you liked No Child Left Behind or not, and most people did not, you had to at least respect the man that was doing what he thought was best for kids.
Yeah, I love that. Also, I hope that we get to call you Karen Johnson, an unorthodox choice from now on.
You can call me the Honorable Karen Johnson, an unorthodox choice.
Orthodox choice.
Unorthodox, yeah. So that was a good memory. I also have memories of going into Wyoming with Senator Enzi and having to defend No Child Left Behind and getting the living snot kicked out of me. And then he brought me back to his house for a glass of wine because he knew how brutal it was.
Well, I can appreciate that. I mean, at least he offered you a little, something in after something like that. I remember you and Carly sending me to Senator Enzi my very first Speak Out Day with Nancy Eklund from Wyoming.
Yeah, she was
awesome.
I
remember she was awesome. RIP, she was awesome. And I remember you telling me I'm about to get the living snot kicked out of me. So buckle up and be prepared. And it actually was a fine meeting. He told us all about his Fitbit and how excited he was about it. So it worked out. We got it done, what we needed to do. But yeah, that's great. So let's talk for a minute about lobbying versus advocating. I know you have opinions on the difference. Can you tell us about the difference from your view and why it's important?
Well, it's not just an opinion. I mean, it's, for those of us that have to register, it's legal, right? So,
good point.
Right, anyone can advocate. So when we go into a congressional office and we say, health and physical education is a core part of a student's day. That's a statement of fact, right? And so we're advocating for health and PE. But when we go into a congressional office and we say, ESSA needs to be, well, let me back up. We do it more on, well, when we went, it was the reauthorization of No Child Left Behind before ESSA. So when we would go in and say, when we reauthorize No Child Left Behind, and health and physical education need to be added to the list of core academic subjects, that's a legislative change. So when you're asking for a legislative change, or when we go in and say Title IV Part A needs to be funded at its authorized level of $1.6 billion, those are specific asks. That's an appropriations change. So a legislative change, an appropriations change, anything you're asking, anytime you're asking for something specific like that, that is actually lobbying. That's not just saying health and PE in schools is a good idea, but we are actually asking for more money to bring health and PE to schools. We're actually asking for a change in law to include health and physical education. That's the difference between advocacy and lobbying. Anyone can advocate. And when you start lobbying, when you hit a threshold, that's when it has to be reported. So that's one of the reasons you have me.
Indeed. And we are so grateful and lucky to have you. So thank you very much for educating us a little bit about that important difference. Let's switch gears a little bit and talk about the HPE profession. And I'm going to pause here and say, I have learned so much about the HPE history related to public affairs from you over time. And I am really lucky for that and grateful for that. So from you, I have learned about the history of the PEP grant and how we got to where we are today with Title IV Part A, which of course calls for funding for physical education, health education, in addition to other areas, special areas. When you look back specifically at the history of HPE and advocacy efforts, what do you think tipped the scales to get us to the better place we are in today?
Tenacity. I mean, it's really tenacity and awareness. I'm sorry.
I said we are a tenacious community, but keep going.
Yes, we are a tenacious community, and also awareness and spirit of full disclosure. Again, I was at the Department of Ed. I knew a lot about No Child Left Behind. And when I was first asked to come on board a million years ago to help raise health and physical education within federal education law, I told my husband, well, first of all, I said, it's not in there? Really? That's not included? And then I came home and I told my husband, I said, well, I got this awesome new client, but I don't think I'm going to have them very long, because how hard can this be? Like, who's going to be against this? And holy cannoli, it was a long road. Just the awareness among Hill staff and members of Congress and policymakers at the Department of Education. And we had, a few administrations that we've been dealing with here. You first had to educate them. And we had to educate everyone on why it was important and the limited amount of funds that were even available to health and PE teachers. And also during that time, it was No Child Left Behind, where everything was teaching to the test, right? Everything was reading, math, and science. And so schools couldn't even comprehend how they were going to be able to provide health and physical education and still get kids up to grade level reading. I think the other thing that, because it was such a long haul, Stephanie, I mean, we've all been doing this forever, was how much research started coming out. Like, we could tell people anecdotally. I remember meeting with one member of Congress who I knew was a runner. He ran every day. And I remember saying, can you imagine if you weren't able to run every morning, or if you were just in your desk for 8 hours, you would lose your mind. Imagine if you're a child and you're trying to learn. And so, we had to first approach everybody with anecdotes, but then the research started coming out and we were able to point to that. The other thing that happened that we were able to jump on was the study called Too Fat to Fight. Do you remember that? That the retired generals did in response to the ag bill and childhood nutrition. So they published a study that said that recruits for the military were failing their physicals because they were obese. So we were able to use that as well. And one thing that I learned when I was at the Department of Ed was you have to talk to Republicans one way and Democrats the other way. So having that military piece from those retired generals to be able to talk about obesity and our military, that started chipping away at it. So there were all these little bits that started to fall into place, but it's really because we were tenacious and we never, ever gave up.
That's fascinating. And I think speaks to the community that I've come to know in terms of truly their tenacity and their dedication to their students and to their profession. And yeah, I will say, I came up through the communications profession, communications and marketing, but specifically around public affairs issues. And I have so much appreciation for the education that you've helped provide to our community and to me about the messages that resonate with Republicans, with Democrats, with both sides of the House, because all of that is so important to understand in any successful advocacy effort, which we've had to date and we will continue to have because of guidance like yours. So thank you for all of that. And I think it's really important. Those are important words that I know folks listening are really reflecting on and thinking about as they think about how they can support the effort moving forward.
Well, you're very kind, but I will say that SHAPE members, getting them up on the Hill was key. Carly and I, we were in offices knocking on doors all the time, but when you get, a member of the community that's able to say, hey, this is what's happening in your hometown. Our school only has fill in the blank, $700 to support our entire PE program. That's when offices have to pay attention because they're there to respond to the needs of their constituents, right? And SHAPE members are the best communicators on the Hill. I mean, bragging on you guys, we're part of the Title IV Part A coalition, and we are always on the forefront where other groups are they're learning from us, right? They're able to replicate some of the things that we're doing, like the backyard advocacy that you all created. We're always a step ahead, and it's nice that you guys are always willing to share your best practices with other organizations and communities.
I love that. Thank you so much for sharing all that. I bet that made a lot of people who've attended Speak Out Day on a regular basis for years feel really good too, which is really cool.
Well, I know it gets frustrating, Stephanie, because sometimes it's like Groundhog Day, where we're all, like, hey,
Yeah.
we're back. Here's the
Yeah.
message. Guess what we're doing? But
Yeah.
you have to do it. I mean,
Yeah.
you know this, right?
You can never take it for granted. Yeah.
Right. And SHAPE members that have been coming on a consistent basis, how staff turns over. So we are constantly having to educate and re-educate. And the other thing is, I mean, Hill staff, they've got hard jobs. So when they can get information from a trusted, credible source, like the PE teacher from their community, that is worth its weight in gold.
Yeah. Yeah, so true and very inspiring. Thank you very much for sharing that. So when you think about the future and HP advocacy and building on all that we've achieved in the past, what are you most hopeful for as we go forward?
in terms of our asks or in terms of funding? Like what specifically?
I think when you sort of picture the future and funding and federal support.
Well, I think we're always going to have to advocate. I mean, that is just the name of the game, right? Um, we are inching up to that $1.6 billion. What I would love to see, and it's not necessarily at the federal level, it's more at the state and school level, is that chunks of these funds are earmarked for health and PE at the school and district level, that our members aren't having to, beg their principals, their superintendents, fill in the blank for the funding, that it is a funding stream that goes right to health and physical education, that we're part of that mix. We can keep the dollars up at the federal level, but my perfect world is where it just comes to our members so they can provide the skills and the services to students, because that's really, it's so impactful for our nation's future. I mean, if our next generation isn't healthy, then all bets are off.
100%. I could not have said it better, and I completely agree with you. I've seen awareness grow of Title IV Part A and the funding that is there and that can support PE and health education. But I will echo everything you said and just add to that I hope that awareness continues to grow, because that is such a big piece of all of this for administrators to understand it's there, what it can be used for, and then, yes, rightfully so, to pick up and support and respect how important HPE is in a school and a district. It leads to all good things, for sure, which we know, but we're still educating many administrators on. So we go forward. It's all good.
I mean, health and physical education really are the foundation that all other learning is built on, right? I mean, if a
100%.
student isn't healthy physically and mentally,
they can't learn.
They can't learn.
Yeah, no brainer.
Right?
Yes, you put it perfectly. Karen, thank you so much for being our guest on today's show. I have so much appreciation for your time. I know you're incredibly busy and doing such good work in this space every day on behalf of Shape America, on behalf of other education clients. So we'll close it out. I mean, I know you've said this before, you are one of our favorites. We really appreciate you, and we love being, I'm sure, one of your favorites. And if you have any last words you want to offer up to our listeners, we welcome them. But thank you again.
Well, it's an honor and a real pleasure working with you all. And I'm not kidding. I love Speak Out Day. Carly and I have already been, working on it, and it's something that we all look forward to.
That's right.
So I can't wait to see everybody.
I love it. And what a great way to close us out. Yes, next year's Speak Out Day will be February 13th to the 14th, 2024. Stay tuned for more information in the future on registration. But we are really excited to have the dates locked down. I'm so excited for all the planning that you and Carly are already doing going into that. It'll be great to spend Valentine's Day on the Hill, right? Which we've done in the past. And we love being on the Hill on Valentine's Day, sharing all the love about HPE with members of Congress. All right. Thank you again, Karen. Thank you to everybody who joined us for today's episode. I hope you tune in the future. And with that, I will close us out. Thanks very much, everybody.
Thank you.